Marcus was the kind of man everyone in town knew. He wasn't famous or rich, but he had something more valuable: respect. People trusted him. His garage sat at the edge of a small town in Georgia, a place where neighbors still waved to each other, and Sunday mornings were spent in church. Marcus had been running his auto repair shop for nearly 10 years. It wasn't big or fancy, but it was clean, honest, and full of tools that had stories of their own. Each tool had been collected over time, some bought, some given, and some inherited from his father, who had taught him everything he knew about fixing cars. Marcus wasn't just a mechanic. He was a helper. It didn't matter if someone couldn't pay in full right away. He let them bring the money later. If someone was stuck on the side of the road, Marcus would drive out there himself, even if it meant closing the garage for an hour. That's just the kind of person he was. Tall, strong, with hands rough from work, but a voice calm and friendly, Marcus had a quiet confidence. He believed in doing right, and he believed that kindness always came back around, though life had tested that belief more than once. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon when it all started. The clouds had been heavy since morning, and by the time it was 4 o'clock, rain had started falling hard. Thunder rolled in the distance, and most people had already gone home to stay dry. Marcus was finishing up a brake job on a pickup truck when he heard the sound of tires pulling into the lot. He looked up and saw a silver Lexus slowly creeping toward the garage entrance. The car's right side looked slightly tilted, like one of the tires had gone flat. He wiped his hands with a rag and stepped out to greet whoever it was. As he approached, the driver's window rolled down, and he saw a woman behind the wheel. She looked to be in her 30s, with neatly styled brown hair and a silk scarf around her neck. Her eyes were bright but worried. "I think I've got a flat," she said, her voice soft but clear. "Yeah, looks like it," Marcus replied, crouching to take a quick look. "You drove over something sharp. Lucky you made it here before it got worse." The woman smiled, but it seemed like a nervous one. "I'm not from around here. My GPS took me on some strange back road, and I didn't know where else to go." "Well, you found the right place," Marcus said. "I'll get it patched up for you. Just give me a few minutes." He told her to sit inside where it was warm and dry. As she waited, Marcus worked quickly, replacing the damaged tire with a spare. As he worked, he noticed that the car was spotless. The inside smelled like perfume, and everything looked expensive, the kind of car and appearance that didn't usually show up in his small-town garage. When he was done, he walked back over to her and gave a small nod. "All set. You're good to go." "That was fast," she said, stepping out and opening her purse. "How much do I owe you?" Marcus waved a hand. "Don't worry about it. Bad weather? Unexpected trouble, it happens. Just be careful out there." She seemed surprised. "Are you sure? I don't mind paying." He shook his head with a small smile. "No charge. Just doing what I'd hope someone would do for me if I were in your shoes." The woman looked at him for a moment like she was trying to figure something out. Then she extended her hand. "I'm Laura. Thank you, really." "Marcus," he replied, shaking her hand. She got back into the car, but before leaving, she rolled the window down again. "Do you live around here?" "Born and raised," Marcus answered. "Never left." Laura smiled. "Nice town. I might be staying around here for a little while. Maybe I'll see you again." "Maybe," Marcus said, watching as she drove off into the rain. What Marcus didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that Laura hadn't found his garage by accident. She wasn't just some lost traveler. She had come to that town for a reason, and Marcus was that reason. She had studied him, read about his garage in a small article online, and had even driven past it more than once before finally stopping. Everything she said that day was part of a plan, carefully thought out and practiced. The scarf, the flat tire, the nervous smile. It had all been arranged. But Laura wasn't a bad person, at least not in the way most people would think. She had her reasons, and in her mind, they were strong enough to justify everything she was doing. She had grown up in a world very different from Marcus's. Her life had been full of high-rise buildings, business deals, and people who spoke in numbers more than words. She worked with a real estate company in the city, one that had recently set its sights on Marcus's town. Her bosses had discovered that the land on which Marcus's garage stood was valuable. The whole block, in fact, was marked for development. A new shopping plaza, high-end apartments, maybe even a hotel. But the problem was, Marcus's garage was sitting right in the middle of it. He owned the land outright. They couldn't move forward unless he agreed to sell, and every attempt to approach him through regular channels had failed. He wasn't interested in money or offers. He wasn't even rude about it. He just said no, and went on fixing cars. So they sent Laura. Her job wasn't to convince him with money. It was to get close, build trust, and then find a way to make the deal happen from the inside. She had done this before. Soft approaches, friendly conversations, a little charm, and it had worked more times than not. She didn't enjoy lying, but she told herself it was just business. People sell, people move, and life goes on. But what she hadn't expected was how different Marcus would be from the usual people she dealt with. From the moment he helped her, in the rain, not asking for anything in return, something felt different. She had met polite people before, but Marcus's kindness was real. Not the kind that expects something back, not the kind that puts on a smile for show. It felt honest, and that honesty made her hesitate. After leaving the garage, Laura drove to a small rental house just outside of town, a place her company had quietly arranged for her. She sat by the window watching the rain, thinking about Marcus. This wasn't going to be easy. The next day, she came back, pretending that the tire didn't feel right, and maybe he could check it again. Marcus didn't suspect anything. He greeted her with the same calm warmth, fixed the tire again, and even offered her a cup of coffee from the old machine in the corner of the garage. They talked about cars, the town, the weather. Nothing serious, nothing personal. But even in those small conversations, Marcus's quiet goodness showed. He didn't talk much about himself, but he listened carefully when she spoke. Laura found herself smiling more than she meant to. She reminded herself why she was there, but the reason began to blur at the edges. She came back again 2 days later, saying she just wanted to say thank you properly. She brought him lunch in a paper bag, barbecue ribs from a local place she'd looked up. Marcus seemed surprised, maybe even touched. "You didn't have to do that," he said, accepting the food. "I know," she replied. "But I wanted to." They ate together on the bench outside the garage, watching cars pass by on the wet road. It was quiet, peaceful. Marcus talked a bit more that day. He told her how his father had started the garage before passing it on to him. He spoke of the struggle to keep it going, the long hours, the satisfaction of solving problems with his hands. He even mentioned that some big company had been trying to buy the place for months, but he didn't trust them. "I'm not interested in turning this into a shopping center," he said. "This garage means something. It's more than just work. It's my life." Laura nodded slowly. She said nothing. That night, alone in her rented house, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Guilt. Real, heavy guilt. She looked at the notes she had written about Marcus, the fake story she had used to introduce herself, and the contract hidden in her bag that was waiting for a signature. And for the first time since starting the assignment, she wondered if she was doing the right thing. Because Marcus wasn't just a target. He was a good man. And Laura had just stepped into his life with a lie. After that rainy afternoon when Marcus helped Laura with her flat tire, something began to change in both their lives. At first, it was just a short meeting between a mechanic and a stranger. But that small moment became the beginning of something much bigger. Laura had come with a plan, carefully prepared and thought out. She had steps to follow, a mission to complete, and a company expecting results. But the more time she spent with Marcus, the harder it became to follow the plan exactly as it was written. In the days that followed, Laura kept finding new reasons to visit the garage. She never made it obvious. Sometimes it was a noise her car was making. Sometimes she just said she was in the area and thought she'd stop by. Each time, Marcus welcomed her without asking too many questions. He was used to working alone, and maybe he liked having someone to talk to now and then. Laura noticed how patient he was with customers, how kindly he spoke even when people didn't understand cars. He explained things clearly and never talked down to anyone. There was no pressure, no tricks, just honest work. One afternoon, Laura arrived at the garage pretending she needed an oil change. She knew her car didn't need it, but it gave her another chance to talk with Marcus. While he worked under the hood, they chatted again. She asked about the town, what he liked about it, if he ever thought of leaving. Marcus said he had thought about moving once or twice, but this place was home. His parents had lived here, his childhood memories were here, and most importantly, the garage was here. He didn't want a bigger life, just a better one. That answer made Laura pause. She was used to people who wanted more. More money, more power, more attention. But Marcus wanted peace. That evening, Laura sat at her small rental table, laptop open, staring at the message she was supposed to send. Her bosses were waiting for updates. They wanted to know how close she was to getting Marcus to talk about selling the property. But what could she say? He's too kind for me to trick? He smiles when he talks about spark plugs. That wasn't what they wanted to hear, so she wrote something short and professional. Still working on building trust. He seems open. We'll continue making contact. It was vague enough to keep them calm but didn't tell the full truth, because the truth was starting to get messy. Laura was beginning to like being around Marcus, and not just for the job. She started to look forward to their conversations. She caught herself laughing at his quiet jokes, noticing the way he focused when fixing something, and the care he put into even the smallest jobs. Marcus, on the other hand, had no idea what was happening behind the scenes. For him, Laura was just a kind, curious woman who had somehow taken an interest in his little garage. He didn't ask many questions. He wasn't the suspicious type. All he knew was that she brought good conversation, and on days when business was slow, her visits broke up the silence. It felt nice. He didn't think of her as a threat. In fact, he started to look forward to seeing her too. Laura began helping out in small ways, without being asked. One day she cleaned up some old newspapers lying around the waiting area. Another time, she brought him lunch again, this time from a different local spot. He offered to pay her back, but she shook her head. "It's just lunch," she said, with a smile. "You've helped me more than once. Consider this a thank you." It wasn't long before she started spending longer hours at the garage. Sometimes she'd sit nearby and read or scroll through her phone, occasionally glancing at Marcus while he worked. The noise of tools and engines became background music. She found comfort in the smell of oil and rubber. Things that once seemed foreign to her now felt familiar. She also began asking questions, genuine ones, not just the kind her company wanted. She asked about how engines worked, what parts did what, and why certain repairs took longer. Marcus was happy to explain. Teaching her reminded him of his younger days when he used to help his little cousins with their bikes. Her interest made him feel respected, and her attention made the long days feel shorter. One day, as Marcus was locking up the shop, he found Laura waiting outside. She looked different, more serious than usual. "Can I ask you something personal?" she said. "Sure," he replied, leaning against the garage door. "Why did you really decide to stay here? I mean, a man with your skills could go to the city, open a big shop, make more money." Marcus thought for a moment before answering. "Money's not everything," he said. "I fix things. That's what I love doing. And here, I don't just fix cars, I help people. I know their stories. I know whose mom is sick, whose kid just got their license, who's working 2 jobs just to pay for a brake job. That means something." Laura nodded slowly. That's rare. Marcus looked at her curiously. Why do you ask? No reason, she lied. Just wondering. That night, Laura couldn't sleep. Her chest felt heavy. Marcus wasn't just a name on a contract anymore. He was a good man. The kind of man who didn't deserve to be tricked. The plan was simple before. Get close, make him trust her, then suggest selling the land in a way that felt like his idea. But now everything felt different. She was too deep in it, not just the job, but something else. Something she hadn't expected. She had never had someone like Marcus in her life. Most of the men she met in the city were polished, always looking over her shoulder for someone more important. But Marcus looked directly at her. He listened. He saw her, not just what she looked like or what she could offer. And that scared her more than anything. One morning, she brought coffee to the shop, black for him, caramel latte for herself. As they sipped together, Laura looked around the garage. You ever think about expanding? She asked. Maybe getting a second. Location? Hiring more people? Marcus chuckled. I've thought about it, sure. But money's tight. And I'd need the right kind of help. I'm not a businessman, just a mechanic. But you could be both, Laura said. You're smart. You care about what you do. That's a rare combination. He smiled at her. Maybe. Maybe one day. She felt a strange sense of pride, hearing him say that, as if his dreams were starting to matter to her too. But the truth she carried inside her was growing heavier. She was lying every day. Every smile, every shared lunch, every question. It all began as part of a lie. And even though her feelings had started to change, the lie was still there, sitting in her heart like a stone. She knew it would come out. One day, and when it did, she would lose everything she was starting to care about. One evening, Laura sat at the edge of the garage while Marcus cleaned up. The sun was going down, and the sky was full of orange and pink. The air smelled like gasoline and fresh grass. Marcus, she said softly. He looked up. Yeah? She hesitated. Have you ever trusted someone who ended up hurting you? He didn't answer right away. He wiped his hands with a cloth, then leaned against a toolbox. Yeah, he said. A few times. What did you do? She asked. I forgave some. Others I let go. Depends on the reason. She looked down. What if they had a reason? But it still hurt you? Marcus tilted his head. Then I'd want to hear the reason. But it wouldn't erase the lie. Laura nodded, feeling like her throat was closing. He looked at her kindly. Everything okay? She forced a smile. Yeah. Just thinking. When she drove away that night, she knew something had to change. Either she had to walk away and finish her job before it got more personal, or she had to come clean and risk losing him completely. But neither choice felt right. She didn't want to leave, and she didn't want to lie anymore. The next morning, she didn't go to the garage. She stayed in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering what Marcus would say if she told him the truth. She imagined the look on his face, the confusion, the pain, the silence. She had never cared so much about anyone's reaction before. That scared her too. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Marcus. You okay? Didn't see you today. She stared at the screen, unsure what to write. I'm okay. Just needed a day. Hope the shop's doing good. He replied a minute later. Busy day, but it's better when you're around. Take care. Her heart ached. Laura knew the lie couldn't last forever. She had come to destroy something good, but somehow, she had started to protect it instead. Her plan was falling apart, and for the first time she wasn't sure if that was a bad thing. The days passed slowly for Laura after she skipped her usual visit to the garage. She spent most of her time sitting alone in the small apartment she had rented, thinking about Marcus and the way things had changed between them. What had started as a mission now felt more like a trap she had set for herself. The company she worked for had no idea how much her emotions had become tangled in the assignment. She was supposed to be a professional, clear-minded, focused, and emotionally distant. But Marcus had ruined that plan without even knowing it. Laura looked around her apartment. There were files and papers on the table, printouts of the property, maps, and notes her company had given her. They wanted Marcus to sell his garage and the land it sat on. The company had big plans to build a shopping plaza right in that area. They thought the garage was just an old building run by a small-town mechanic who wouldn't ask too many questions. They thought it would be easy. Laura had been sent in to soften him, to make the idea of selling feel like a good opportunity. Her job was to get close, build trust, and guide him toward saying yes. But now she couldn't imagine helping them take that place away from him. That night, she opened her laptop and started typing a message to her boss. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. What was she supposed to say? That she couldn't continue? That she had fallen for the man she was meant to deceive? She sighed and closed the laptop. She couldn't send that message. Not yet. The next morning, she forced herself to go back to the garage. When she walked in, Marcus was under a car, working with his back turned to her. She stood there for a moment, watching him, remembering how steady and focused he always seemed. Then he looked up, saw her, and smiled. "There you are," he said, wiping his hands. "Was starting to think you'd forgotten about me." Laura smiled back, but her heart wasn't light. She sat on a small stool near the workbench. "Just needed a day," she said. "Had a lot on my mind." Marcus nodded. "We all do sometimes." There was a pause. Then Laura said, "Marcus, what would you do if someone close to you wasn't being honest?" He looked at her carefully, sensing the weight in her voice. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pulled up a crate and sat across from her. "Depends on why they lied," he said. "Some people lie to protect themselves. Others lie to protect someone else. And then there are those who lie just to get what they want." "What if someone started with one reason and ended with another?" she asked. He leaned forward. "Are we still talking in general?" She looked down at her hands, twisting her fingers nervously. "I'm not sure." Marcus didn't press further. Instead, he gently changed the subject. They talked about music, old TV shows, and what it was like growing up in the area. Laura relaxed a little. She needed that, just normal conversation. But the guilt was still sitting in her chest, pressing harder each day. Later that week, Marcus invited her to a community barbecue. "It's not fancy," he warned. "Just a bunch of folks cooking, laughing, and sharing stories." Laura smiled. "Sounds perfect." When they arrived at the park where the barbecue was held, Laura noticed how everyone knew Marcus. People waved, shouted greetings, and asked him how business was going. He greeted everyone with warmth, making them feel important. Laura realized then that Marcus wasn't just a mechanic. He was a piece of the town itself. People respected him. He had earned it with years of honest work and a kind heart. During the event, she met some of his friends. One of them, an older woman named Miss Ellie, pulled her aside with a smile. "You new around here?" Miss Ellie asked. "Yes," Laura replied, trying to sound casual. "Just visiting for a while." Miss Ellie looked at her with sharp eyes. "Well, I hope you're not here to break our Marcus's heart. That boy's been through enough." Laura forced a smile. "I would never hurt him." But even as she said the words, she wasn't sure they were true. After the barbecue, Marcus walked her back to her car. The evening breeze was soft, and the streetlights cast a golden glow around them. "I'm glad you came," he said. "Me too," she replied. They stood in silence for a few seconds before Marcus said, "You know, I've been meaning to ask, what do you really do, Laura? I mean, besides getting oil changes and bringing me lunch." Her heart skipped. This was the moment she had feared. "I work in real estate," she said carefully. "Mostly development projects." "Ah," Marcus said. So you buy and sell properties? Something like that. He nodded slowly, but she could tell he was thinking deeply. You're not here to buy my land, are you? He asked quietly. Laura froze. The air between them went still. The sound of cars in the distance faded, and all she could hear was her heartbeat in her ears. I was sent here to talk to you, she said honestly. About your land. About selling. But I didn't plan on any of this. I didn't expect to care. I didn't expect to like you. Marcus didn't say anything for a long time. He just looked at her, his expression unreadable. So it was all fake? He asked finally. No, she said quickly. Not all of it. It started that way. Yes, but then I got to know you, and the plan started to feel wrong. You're not just some property owner. You're a good man. And this place, it means something. He nodded slowly. You lied to me. I know, she whispered. And I'm sorry. He looked away, his jaw tight. I trusted you. I didn't mean to hurt you. But you did. Laura felt tears well up in her eyes. I'll leave if that's what you want. I'll walk away right now. I won't let them take this place from you. Marcus didn't answer. He turned and walked, back toward the garage, leaving her standing alone by her car. That night, Laura sat in her apartment crying silently. She had told the truth finally, but it had come too late. She had broken the very trust she had helped build. She had ruined something that had become real to her, and now she didn't know how to fix it. The next morning, she went to the garage, unsure if he would let her in. But the door was open. Marcus was working as usual, his face serious. He didn't look up when she walked in. I just came to say I'm sorry again, she said. I know you probably don't want to see me. I just wanted you to know I quit the job. I told them I wouldn't help them anymore. I told them the garage isn't for sale. Marcus finally looked at her. Why? Because you were right, she said. This place isn't just a business. It's part of you. And I couldn't be the one who helped take that away. He studied her face. They're not going to be happy. I don't care. He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded slightly. All right. Laura felt a small wave of relief, but she knew things wouldn't go back to how they were. Not right away. Trust takes time to rebuild. She had broken something and now she had to live with that. Over the next few days, she didn't visit the garage. She wanted to give Marcus space. She spent her time walking around town, thinking about what she really wanted from her life. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't following a plan. She was just feeling. And strangely, it felt better than any strategy she had ever followed before. One afternoon, she heard a knock on her door. When she opened it, Marcus was standing there. I figured it was my turn to bring you lunch, he said, holding up a bag. Laura smiled, eyes wide with surprise. You didn't have to. I know, he said, but maybe we can start again, slowly, honestly this time. She stepped aside to let him in. I'd like that. And as they sat together on her small couch, sharing sandwiches in silence, something new began, something fragile, honest, and full of possibilities. After that afternoon in Laura's apartment, something quiet and gentle began to grow between her and Marcus. It wasn't the same as before. The laughter and easy comfort that once came so naturally were now mixed with cautious words and long pauses. Trust, once broken, doesn't return all at once. But the fact that Marcus had come to see her, brought her lunch, and said he was willing to try again, that meant something. Laura didn't want to push things. She knew she had to earn back what she had lost. So instead of showing up at the garage every day like before, she started doing little things, small ways of saying she cared without overwhelming him. She left him coffee some mornings on the counter before he opened up. Sometimes she would bake something and drop it off with a note. She didn't wait around to talk. She just let him feel her presence without pressure. Marcus noticed all of it. He didn't say much, but he began to smile again when he talked to her. The wall between them didn't disappear, but it began to shrink. And slowly, the distance between them started to feel less cold. One afternoon, as summer heat wrapped the town in heavy warmth, Marcus called her. "You doing anything this evening?" he asked. She smiled just hearing his voice. "Nothing I can't cancel. Want to take a drive? I've got something to show you." Her heart beat faster. "Sure." When he picked her up in his old red pickup truck, she could tell he had cleaned it up just for her. It still smelled faintly of engine oil, but it looked neat, and he had even placed a small bottle of water in the cup holder for her. They drove for a while, past the edge of town, through the winding roads that led into the hills. The windows were rolled down, and the wind carried in the sounds of crickets and rustling leaves. They didn't talk much at first. It was a peaceful kind of silence. Laura looked out the window, enjoying the scenery, the wide-open fields, the birds flying in the distance, and the sun beginning to dip lower in the sky. After about half an hour, Marcus pulled the truck to the side of a quiet dirt road. There was a small gate, and beyond it, a field of tall grass swaying gently in the breeze. He got out and opened the gate, then gestured for her to follow him. She stepped out, confused but curious. "Where are we?" Marcus led her across the field toward a cluster of trees in the distance. As they walked, he began to talk. "My dad used to bring me here when I was little," he said. "He said this place made him feel alive." Laura glanced around. It was beautiful. The trees were tall and old, their branches heavy with green leaves. In the middle of the clearing there was an old wooden bench, worn and slightly tilted but still strong. They sat down together, and Marcus looked around like he was seeing memories in every direction. "I used to think he was just being dramatic," he said. "But now, I get it." Laura stayed quiet, letting him speak at his own pace. He built the garage with his own hands, worked there every day until his body gave out. And even after he passed, I kept it going. Not just because I needed the money, but because it meant something. It was his dream, and now it's mine. Laura nodded, her throat tight. "That's why it hurt," he added quietly. "When I found out what you were here for, it wasn't just about the land. It was about everything it stood for." "I understand," she said softly. "And I'm so sorry." He turned to look at her. "I believe you." They sat in silence again, watching the sun dip below the trees, the sky painted in gold and pink. It was one of those rare moments when the world seemed to slow down. After a while, they walked back to the truck. On the drive home, Marcus turned on the radio. A soft, bluesy song played, and Laura found herself tapping her fingers gently to the rhythm. It wasn't just the music. It was the feeling of peace, fragile but real. In the days that followed, Marcus started to invite her back to the garage. Not for work, just to sit, talk, or share a sandwich. Sometimes she helped him organize tools or clean up a messy drawer. They didn't rush anything. But something was being rebuilt, carefully, honestly. One morning, Laura arrived at the garage with 2 cups of coffee. Marcus was already working under a car. She placed the cups on the counter and waited. When he rolled out from under the car and saw her, he grinned. "You're making a habit of spoiling me," he said. She laughed. "Just being nice." He stood up and took the coffee. "It's working." That day, they worked side by side on an old pickup truck that belonged to a local farmer. Laura handed him tools, held the flashlight, and even got her hands greasy. She laughed when she accidentally dropped a wrench, and Marcus teased her for not knowing a socket from a screwdriver. It felt natural, light, and full of quiet joy. Later, they sat on the steps outside the garage, drinking lemonade and watching the traffic pass by. "You ever think about staying here?" Marcus asked suddenly. Laura looked at him. "You mean, staying in town?" He nodded. "You've seen the worst of me. And you're still here. I wonder if there's a part of you that's not just passing through." She thought about it. The town had grown on her. The people, the peace, the slow rhythm. It was all so different from her fast-paced corporate life. And being with Marcus made it even better. "I've thought about it," she said honestly. "More than once." He looked at her with those calm, steady eyes. "I'd like that." That night, Laura sat on her bed, staring at the ceiling. Could she really walk away from everything she had built before? The company, the money, the power? Or was this new life, this slower, simpler, more honest life, what she truly wanted? The next week, Marcus took her to meet his mother. She lived in a small house with a big garden filled with flowers and vegetables. Mrs. Harris was kind but sharp-eyed. She served them sweet tea and asked Laura many questions. Laura answered each one honestly. And by the end of the visit, Mrs. Harris gave her a soft smile. "You've got a good heart," she said. "Don't waste it." After that, things began to move forward. Slowly but clearly, Laura found herself more involved in town life. She attended community meetings, helped with a fundraiser for the local school, and even joined a group that worked to preserve small businesses in the area. She wasn't just passing through anymore, she was becoming part of the place. But the past wasn't done with her yet. One evening she got a call from her former boss. He sounded angry, disappointed. "You think you can just walk away?" he snapped. "We had a deal. We paid for your time. You had a target. And you're going to throw that all away for a man with greasy hands and a broken-down garage?" Laura held the phone tightly. "It was never just a job. It was your career." "No, it was your plan. Not mine. You'll regret this." "I already did," she said, "but not anymore." She hung up the phone and sat quietly for a long time. That part of her life was over. She had made her choice. And as the sun set outside her window, painting the sky in soft pink, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Freedom. The next day, she told Marcus about the call. He nodded. "I figured they'd come after you. I don't care. They can't take anything from me that matters anymore." He reached out and held her hand. "I'm proud of you." Life wasn't perfect. They still had moments of doubt. There were still awkward silences, moments when the old hurt came back to the surface. But every time that happened, they faced it together. They talked, they listened, and little by little, they built something real. Laura started writing again. She had always loved storytelling, but had buried that part of herself in corporate life. Now she wrote about the town, the people, the stories hidden in dusty roads and broken engines. And Marcus cheered her on every step of the way. One day, she found a note in her mailbox. No return address. Just a short message. "You were supposed to follow orders. You made the wrong choice." She brought the note to Marcus. "They're trying to scare me," she said. He looked at it and shook his head. "You didn't make the wrong choice." "I know." But the message was a reminder that the past wasn't fully gone. She would always carry the weight of what she had been sent to do. But now, she had something stronger. Truth, love, and a place she could finally call home. That evening, they sat outside the garage again, just like before, watching the world go by. "I never thought this would happen," Laura said. "What?" "That. I'd come here with one mission and leave with a whole new life," Marcus smiled. "Sometimes the best things happen when you least expect them." And she knew he was right. They sat in silence, the sky turning dark above them, stars slowly appearing one by one. The future was uncertain. But for the first time in a long time, Laura wasn't afraid. Because whatever came next, they would face it together. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Laura and Marcus found themselves growing closer, not just as friends or business partners, but as something deeper, something that neither had expected when they first met. Their bond was built on truth, forgiveness, and the shared hope of a future together. It wasn't easy. The shadows of the past lingered. reminding them that life was full of challenges. But together, they faced everything. Laura's decision to stay in the small town was not without struggle. At first, she felt the weight of leaving behind her old life. The city, the job, the fast pace. It was all so different from the slow rhythm of the town. Some nights she would lie awake, wondering if she had made a mistake. But when she thought of Marcus, the garage, and the simple, honest life she was building, those doubts faded. Marcus, for his part, was learning to trust again. Trust was not something he gave lightly, especially after what had happened with Laura. But seeing her, every day, watching how she cared for the town, the people, and the garage, he felt hope. Hope that love could heal wounds, and that they could build something lasting. Together, they dreamed of the future. They talked about fixing up the garage, expanding it to serve more people, and maybe even opening a small cafe next door. It was a vision filled with hard work, but also joy. They wanted to create a place where the community could gather, where stories would be shared, and friendships made. One afternoon, Laura sat at her desk writing an article for the local newspaper. It was about the history of the garage and the man who kept it alive. She wanted to share the story of Marcus, not just as a mechanic, but as a symbol of resilience and hope. She hoped the article would remind people of what really mattered: community, honesty, and heart. As she typed, Marcus walked in with a wrench in one hand and a smile on his face. "Taking a break?" he asked. Laura looked up and smiled. "Just writing." He leaned against the door frame. "You're good at that." "I'm trying to tell the story right. It deserves that much." Marcus nodded, then walked over to her. "Thanks for believing in me." She reached out and took his hand. "I always did." Their relationship wasn't perfect, of course. There were still moments of tension, days when old fears crept in, and silence fell between them like a heavy curtain. But each time, they chose to talk, to listen, and to understand. They learned that love wasn't about never making mistakes. It was about how you fixed them and moved forward. One evening, a storm rolled in. Rain pounded the roof of the garage, and thunder rumbled in the distance. Marcus and Laura were inside, cleaning up after a long day. Suddenly, there was a loud knock on the door. Marcus opened it cautiously to find a man standing outside, drenched from the rain. He looked rough, tired, but his eyes held a strange kindness. "I heard about you," the man said, glancing at Marcus. "About the garage, and the woman who helped save it." Marcus frowned. "Who are you?" The man smiled faintly. "Name's David. I'm a friend, someone who wants to help." Laura and Marcus exchanged curious glances. David explained that he was an investor who believed in small businesses and communities like theirs. He had heard about the struggle to save the garage and wanted to offer support, financial help, advice, and connections to grow. It was an unexpected offer, but Marcus and Laura listened carefully. They weren't used to accepting help from strangers, but David's sincerity was clear. Over the next few weeks, David became part of their lives. He helped them plan renovations, introduced them to suppliers, and even helped organize community events to raise awareness. The garage started to transform, slowly but surely. The small cafe idea became real. They converted an old shed beside the garage into a cozy spot with wooden tables, fresh flowers, and the smell of coffee brewing. The cafe became a gathering place, where neighbors met, children laughed, and music played softly in the background. Laura loved seeing the town come, alive in ways she never expected. She felt proud, not just of the garage, but of the community spirit that surrounded them. One afternoon, Marcus surprised her with a small gift, a delicate silver necklace with a tiny gear pendant. "It's for you," he said shyly, "a reminder that no matter what happens, we're connected, like the gears in an engine, different parts working together." Laura's eyes filled with tears. She hugged him tightly, feeling more loved than ever before. But life still had challenges. The company Laura had once worked for did not forget her refusal to follow their orders. They sent letters, made phone calls, and even tried to buy the land again through other means. The pressure was real, and sometimes it felt like a storm they couldn't escape. One evening, as Laura and Marcus sat on the porch of the garage, she confessed her fears. "What if they don't stop?" she asked. "What if they come back with something worse?" Marcus took her hand firmly. "We'll face it. Together. This place, this town, our life. It's worth fighting for." She nodded, feeling stronger with him by her side. Time passed, and their efforts paid off. The town rallied around the garage and the cafe. Local newspapers featured stories about their fight to keep the place alive. People donated money, volunteered, their time, and spread the word. Laura and Marcus became local heroes, not because they sought fame, but because they showed what determination and love could achieve. One crisp autumn morning, Marcus took Laura's hand and led her to the clearing, where his father once brought him. The trees had changed colors, fiery reds, oranges, and golds painting the landscape. He dropped to one knee. "Laura," he said, his voice steady and full of emotion. "You came here with a mission that wasn't your own, but you stayed because you chose this life, this town, and me. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Laura's face. "Yes," she whispered. They embraced as the sun rose, lighting up the sky with promise and hope. Their wedding was small and simple. Just friends, family, and the people who had supported them. It took place in the field by the garage, under the open sky, surrounded by the sounds of laughter and love. As they exchanged vows, Laura thought about the journey they had taken. From strangers to partners, from deception to truth, from doubt to trust, it had all led them here. The garage, once threatened with destruction, was now a symbol of resilience and love. The town had come together, and so had they. Life was not perfect, and they knew challenges would come. But with each other they were ready to face whatever the future held. After the ceremony, as the sun set and stars began to twinkle, Laura and Marcus stood side by side, hands clasped, hearts full. They had found something rare and precious. A love born from honesty, nurtured by forgiveness, and strengthened by hope. And in that moment, nothing else mattered.